Today, we're making some simple breakfast recipes, starting with one of my favorites, the farmer's frittata. So to make my frittata, it is super simple. All you need are a couple things, most stuff I have left over in the fridge anyway. So I start with 7 eggs, a couple of cherry tomatoes, some white corn, a little bit of shredded mozzarella cheese, garlic, asparagus, and for my dairy, a bit of milk. So first, I'm gonna get cracking my eggs. And the idea here is I'm using a combination of egg whites and whole eggs. So I'm getting all of that great protein from the egg whites, but that beautiful egg flavor from the whole eggs as well. You can tell these are really fresh because of how yellow and bright the yolk is and how well contained the protein is. So there are my whole eggs. Now I have to start separating the egg whites. And that's pretty easy. You can do it with the eggshell or with just your bare hands. A great use for all of these leftover egg yolks, custard. Now, most of the nutritional value of the egg is in the egg yolk, but it also has all of the fat. So you want to strike a really good balance by incorporating a lot of egg whites in this. Now I'm all done with my eggs, but I have been handling raw eggs, so I need to go wash my hands and clean off my board. So to season my eggs, I'm just gonna use a little bit of salt and pepper. I love pepper. And now I'm gonna add a little bit of milk, just a 1/4 cup. You can eyeball it if you like. The milk adds a little bit of dairy content, but also a really beautiful flavor, and it gets everything to brown really nicely. Time to whisk. When you're whisking it, you don't have to go crazy beating it. You can just go long enough until it's really nicely blended together. So these eggs look really great. I'm gonna get started with doing the rest of my vegetables. I like keeping my vegetables relatively whole. I have whole corn kernels, I have whole cherry tomatoes, so I'm gonna keep my asparagus in larger segments. And one of the tricks here with asparagus is it gets a little bit woody down at the bottom. Some people like to snap, but sometimes you can actually end up wasting a little bit of that asparagus, so I like to cut it. So if you can kind of just get a sense of where that spot is just by bending it. For this one, it's gonna be about here. It's where it starts getting a little bit lighter and a little bit woody. So I'm just gonna chop these into 1-inch segments, large enough so they still have their flavor and texture. If you chop them any smaller, they might lose that in the frittata. Great, so everything looks really good. I'm gonna get started on prepping my frittata. So first, I'm going to saute my corn and my garlic. So into the pan goes a little bit of olive oil, and you wanna have your pan already warm when you add your olive oil. So I'm waiting until the corn gets a little bit soft. You just want it to kind of get a little bit toasted and kind of golden brown. Well, my corn's looking really good. It's starting to soften up a little bit. So now I'm gonna add my garlic. And the key with garlic is it burns really easily. So you always wanna add it to something in the pan. Never put it directly into a hot pan. Oh, it smells amazing. So I'm gonna let this just saute together until it becomes a little bit golden brown. Everything's beautiful and toasted. And meanwhile, I'm gonna season it with a little bit of salt and pepper, just so that everything is perfectly seasoned. Then I don't have to worry about adjusting anything later. So this looks perfect. If I were to cook this any longer, the corn would start losing its starch, and you really want that to go into the frittata. Now I'm gonna add my tomatoes, and I'm adding them whole. And the reason is I love the pop of juiciness you get when you bite into them in the frittata. So I'm just gonna let these saute a little bit just to get a little bit of oil on them, a little bit of heat so they start to soften. Now I'm gonna add my asparagus just right in. So I'm adding my asparagus last because this is the most delicate of all the vegetables I'm including in this frittata. It can get overcooked really quickly and you lose that beautiful flavor and crunch. It can get really stringy and it's just no fun to eat. Great, well, I'm gonna add my eggs now because all the vegetables look absolutely beautiful. Now is your chance to move the vegetables around a little bit just to make sure it's evenly distributed. I want everyone to get some tomato and some asparagus. So this is very well set. I'm gonna just sprinkle a little bit of cheese on it and then pop it straight into the oven. So my frittata is done. It looks beautiful. The way you can tell it's done, the edges have puffed up, it looks crispy around the edge, but it still has a little bit of give in the middle. It's not totally set. It's almost like when you bake a cheesecake, you still want a little bit of jiggle. Perfect. So my frittata is almost done. I just have a couple of finishing touches to add to it. I love arugula, especially with the cheese. It's gonna go really well with that because arugula is a little bit peppery, kind of bitter, and with something like cheese, it goes perfect. So I'm just gonna do a little mound in the middle and then drizzle the whole thing with olive oil. It just adds that little bit of freshness, a really great pop of color, and I love olive oil on anything. This is more than enough for, I'd say, at least 2 to 3 people. So this is definitely a great breakfast to make for friends.